Brent Hinds was more than just a guitarist. He was a storm, a southern outlaw of sound whose wild mix of banjo twang, psychedelic shred, and metal fury redefined what heavy music could be. As co-founder and lead guitarist of Mastodon, Brent became one of the most innovative figures in modern rock and metal. His solos were strange, soulful, and savage, equal parts chaos and beauty. By the time of his death in August 2025, Hinds had amassed an estimated net worth of about $4 million, depending on different reports. Most of this came from Mastodon's decades of success: album sales, touring, merchandise, and a Grammy win, along with side projects and endorsements. Yet, to those who knew him or loved his music, the real wealth he left behind wasn't financial. It was the riffs, the records, and the restless spirit he etched into metal history. Early life. Brent Hinds was born on January 16, 1974, in Helena, Alabama, a small town outside Birmingham. He grew up in a working-class family, with a childhood that was both wild and formative. Although his parents' names remain largely private, what is known is that Brent came from a household that didn't push him toward convention. Instead, he gravitated toward mischief, rebellion, and above all, music. From a young age, Brent showed a knack for rhythm and melody. Oddly enough, his first instrument wasn't the guitar at all. It was the banjo. Sitting on porches in Alabama, he picked out country and bluegrass runs that would later bleed into Mastodon's unorthodox sound. That unusual starting point gave him a finger-picking technique and phrasing most rock guitarists lacked. Education was never his strongest pursuit. By his own admission, he was a hellion, more interested in fighting, partying, and experimenting with sound than in books. School often played second fiddle to mischief. Brent once joked in interviews that his town was boring him, and he needed something more thrilling than textbooks to keep his attention. That thrill came in the form of guitars, motorcycles, and, later, a life on stage. Rumors suggest he had siblings named Tracy Perry and Brad Hinds, though he rarely spoke publicly about family. What is clear is that young Brent was already carving out a life against the grain, restless, rebellious, and bound for the chaos of music. Personal life. Behind his wild stage persona, Brent's personal life had moments of tenderness and turbulence. In May 2017, he married Reisa Moreno in a colorful ceremony. True to his unpredictable nature, Brent proposed to Reisa during a live performance, a gesture as dramatic as any of his solos. For a time, the pair were inseparable, though reports suggest their marriage ended in 2023. There are no public records of Brent having children. His family was largely his bandmates, fellow musicians, and the community of fans who followed his every move. As for religion, Brent never openly identified with a particular faith. His music, however, often touched on themes of spirituality, life, death, and the mystical, not in a traditional religious sense, but in a way that suggested he was always searching for something beyond the material. Brent was never content with just one band or one sound. Outside of Mastodon, he threw himself into multiple side projects that revealed his playful, experimental side. Fiend Without a Face, a quirky psychobilly and surf rock outfit that fused country twang with punk madness. Giraffe Tongue Orchestra, a supergroup with members of the Dillinger Escape Plan, Jane's Addiction, and the Mars Volta. Legend of the Seagull Men, a psychedelic rock band featuring Danny Carey of Tool, steeped in nautical mythology and wild stage antics. 4 Hour Fogger, one of his earliest groups, formed before Mastodon, with bassist Troy Sanders. These projects showed Brent's refusal to be boxed in. Where others saw heavy metal as a cage, he used it as a launching pad into country, psychedelia, and even surf rock. Professional career. The road to Mastodon. By the mid-1990s, Brent had left Alabama for Atlanta, Georgia, chasing music with a dangerous edge. In Atlanta, fate brought him together with Troy Sanders, Bill Kelleher, and Brand Daler. By 2000, the four formed Mastodon, a band that would soon be hailed as one of the most original forces in modern metal. Brent wasn't just a guitarist. He was the band's unpredictable soul. His riffs were jagged yet melodic, his solos as much storytelling as shredding. He brought banjo licks into metal, mixing them with southern rock swagger and progressive rock ambition. The rise of Mastodon. Mastodon's first album, Remission 2002, was raw and heavy, but it announced a band destined to push boundaries. Leviathan 2004, inspired by Herman Melville's Moby Dick, was their breakout, a stormy, conceptual masterpiece that put them on the global map. From there, the band evolved with every record. Blood Mountain 2006, psychedelic and frenetic. Crack the Sky 2009, mystical and deeply emotional, featuring some of Brent's most powerful solos. The Hunter 2011, more accessible, showing their versatility. Once More Around the Sun 2014, and Emperor of Sand 2017, cemented them as modern legends, with Emperor earning the Grammy Award for Best Metal Performance in 2018 for the song Sultan's Curse. Hushed and Grim 2021, a sprawling double album dealing with grief and mortality, and Brent's last major work with the band. Brent's stage presence was wild, with tattoos sprawled across his face and arms, and his fiery red beard whipping as he played. He looked every bit the outlaw he was. On stage, he'd veer from blistering solos to drunken banter, sometimes self-destructive, always unforgettable. Departure and fallout. In March 2025, Mastodon announced Brent's departure, calling it a mutual decision. Brent, however, publicly stated he had been kicked out, feeling betrayed by his bandmates. The split was messy, but not entirely surprising. Brent had always been volatile, both brilliant and difficult. After leaving Mastodon, he turned back to his side projects, focusing especially on Fiend Without a Face. He was planning a solo tour and had hinted at recording a country-influenced album, one that would showcase the music that had shaped him as a child. House tour and car collection. Unlike many rock stars, Brent didn't flaunt mansions or luxury cars. He was more a motorcycle man than a collector of supercars. His most famous possession was his Harley-Davidson motorcycle, which he rode through Atlanta streets with the same recklessness he brought to the stage. Brent lived in Atlanta, Georgia, in a modest but artistic home filled with instruments, recording equipment, and mementos from touring. Friends often described his house less as a palace and more as a creative workshop, guitars scattered in corners, amps humming, and a banjo always within reach. While fans speculate he may have owned cars, no verified collection has ever been made public. His bike was his real pride, tragically the same bike that claimed his life. College career. Brent Hinds never attended college. His higher education came from years spent in smoky clubs, dive bars, and relentless touring. He once quipped that his real teachers were Black Sabbath, Jimi Hendrix, and country banjo players from Deep South. In many ways, Brent embodied the archetype of the self-taught musician, rough, instinctive, and entirely his own. His lack of formal education never held him back. In fact, it may have freed him to invent a style no classroom could have taught. Cause of death. On August 20th, 2025, tragedy struck. Brent Hinds was riding his Harley-Davidson through Atlanta when a BMW SUV failed to yield while turning at an intersection. The crash was violent, and Brent was pronounced dead at the scene at just 51 years old. The news spread like wildfire through the metal world. Mastodon released a heart-wrenching statement. "We are in a state of unfathomable sadness and grief. Brent was our brother, our bandmate, our inspiration. Together we created music that touched countless lives, and without him, Mastodon would never have existed." Fans across the globe mourned not just the loss of a guitarist, but a unique spirit. Tributes poured in from fellow musicians. Guitar World remembered him as the man who brought country music into metal. Tool's Danny Carey called him a true innovator. For Brent, whose life was lived at full throttle, the motorcycle was both freedom and fate. His passing was sudden, but in a way, it was almost poetic. A man who lived recklessly, going out on the machine he loved. Brent Hinds' story is one of contradiction. The banjo-playing Alabama kid who became a metal icon. The troublemaker who turned chaos into art. The bandmate who both built and burned bridges. His life was messy unpolished and utterly real. From Mastodon's Grammy-winning heights to his countless side projects, from his porch-picking banjo roots to the thunder of his Harley on Atlanta streets, Brent never did anything halfway. He didn't just play guitar, he attacked it, caressed it, bent it to his will, and made it scream in ways no one else could. As of August 23rd, 2025, just days after his death, one truth is clear: Brent Hinds will never be forgotten. His riffs, his reckless charm, and his fearless blending of genres will echo for decades to come. He lived loud, died fast, and left behind a legacy carved in distortion and steel. Rest in riffs, Brent.